and things that are in common.
Absolutely.
That's really good. Can you just, since you are from the American Physical Society, can you just tell us more about the differences between the scientists and how you feel the difference here in Europe and in the United States?
Sure. Physics in of itself is inherently international. And I wouldn't say that the physicists themselves are very different. There's, again, a strong cooperation and collaboration between the U.S. and European physicists, both on an individual basis and on the larger projects where both American and European physicists come to conduct research, such as CERN and things like that. I think that there are more similarities than there are differences. I think what's interesting in looking at attending the council meeting for the EPS is that you have so many nations that are members here of the EPS. So you have this diversity of interests and diversity of issues that are both challenging and both interesting and enriching. Where at APS we are all mostly from the United States. 23% of our members are from the international community, but we don't have that international diversity represented in our council meetings. So that's a difference as well. What's also interesting is we have joint programs with individual national societies like the IOP, the UK Institute of Physics, and where we partner with them, and then we also partner with EPS. We are kind of double dipping, if you will. So that's the main difference, is just the structure of the EPS being multinational and the American Physics Society being more US-centric. Yeah. But by the same token, many members, individual members of the European Physical Society are members of the APS and vice versa. So I noticed a difference in the structure of the two societies, but not a difference in the opportunities of the individual members.
Right, very interesting. So now just quick question for you, since I see you are a woman, I suppose that your word is more a man word, and how do you feel among all these scientists? You are, by education, you are also a scientist, but I mean, does that make any difference or to your work, to your...
Yeah, not at this stage. And the reason I say that is because, number one, I grew up with all brothers, so on a personal level, that's nothing new. But also as a student, you're in classes with mostly, almost sometimes entirely males. So continuing that throughout your career doesn't seem odd. And when I walk into a meeting and it's primarily men, that's the same as it was in most of my jobs. It's the same as it was when I was in university and in my high school science courses, so it's not uncomfortable.
That's good. So do you have a story to tell us or anything that we should record?
I do. I was thinking about this, and Martin Huber's at the end of the table, and what I remember when I first came to the American Physical Society, it was just before our 2004 March meeting. And I was feeling lucky to find my desk. And one of the things my boss, Judy Franz, said to me was, well, at this March meeting, there are going to be some important people there from the European Physical Society, and one of the most important was going to be Martin Huber. And Amy, I want you to set up a meeting for our president and basically everyone who is my boss and me. And so I had to write this very formal invitation to this gentleman, Martin Huber, whom I didn't know, but I was very nervous, and maybe he wasn't even going to be able to come anyway. And not only did he come, he put me so much at ease in my new job and made the whole process so easy for me. And thanks to the European Physical Society, I had a very gentle introduction into my new job at the American Physical Society. Our president enjoyed the opportunity for this meeting. My boss enjoyed the opportunity for this meeting. So, Martin, I thank you for helping me get established in my new job.
Oh, thank you. That's a great story. Thanks.
Thank you very much. This is really touching.
Martin is always the same. You're really great. Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for asking me.
So you're off you're the hook before you thought.
Before I thought. Now I have one more. I'll give the same
Yeah.
speech to the.
Okay, Professor Kubinger, could I ask you to introduce a little bit yourself and tell us who you are and where you work, etc. What is your activity, please?
No problem. I am Henk Kubinga from the University of Groningen. I am a historian of science, and as such I'm a member of the History of Physics group of the European Physical Society. And in that context, we are trying to use the history of physics as a tool to promote the cause of physics in Europe. And since physics is a thoroughly European project, with its roots in the various countries of the community, of the root of the community, its history is an important tool indeed to promote the cause of physics. And well, my personal subject is the history of the molecular theory, and the molecular theory is a project stems from the old atomistic tradition. The atomic theory stems from Greece, as you all know, and the atomic theory has developed through the ages, and once a particular moment, the molecular theory entered in scene. And that molecular theory spread over the various sciences, headed by physics. So, well, in my personal view, that molecular theory could help convince the European community that physics is a worthy subject, if not one of the highest subjects to be studied in science.
That's very interesting. So, how long have you been collaborating with EPS then?
Well, I've had the privilege to contribute to various congresses. There has been a congress with the German Physical Society. I believe it was in 1959. In 2000, there was the Quantum Centenary, co-organized, if I recall well, by the European Physical Society and the German Physical Society. And there was a conference in Paris on the Curie's radioactivity in the 90s. And a few years ago, I was delighted to be allowed to participate, to attend the Congress on Beyond Einstein in Bern. It was under the presidency of Martin Huber, and it was a wonderful occasion to promote my own research, the molecular theory, and to show the direct links with Einstein's new views, revolutionary new views of 1905.
That's very interesting. Do you think that your activity, I mean the role of history and science, could be a useful tool to attract young people to science? Is there something that you have explored in your activity?
Yes, indeed. It's an important subject, and I think that the good examples of the physicists of the past may be used to attract an audience among the youngsters. The youngsters need good examples, people who did distinguish themselves in physics and in culture at large. As you perhaps have noticed, the European Physical Society's first presidents promoted not physics as physics, but physics as an integral part of culture. This is one of the points that should be stressed in the contact with the public. Physicists are not the block-headed people, as some take them to be, but they are integral part of the European culture.
Yeah. So far, so good for the role of history in physics. Now, what do you think about the role of physics in history? Then, how important it is?
Well, surely, unmistakably, physics has been the guiding science among the sciences. When you look around, about the development of the various pictures of the world, it were the physicists. It was Copernicus, it was Galileo, it was Newton, it was somewhat later Laplace in France, who paved the way for the science, the physics of the future. And in that context, the physics was the leading science. The innovations of physics directed the course of the other sciences, chemistry, biology, medicine. So we physicists have the right to be proud, to take pride in their history, in their actual endeavors, and in the future. That would be my message.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. So how do you see the future then of physics in the large context of society? How do you see the
It's one of the,
evolution?
I think it's one of the motors of human culture. And as such, the European physicists have a special task, because they are the group with the largest part of history, which has developed the most of the actual foundations of physics. So we may take pride not only in physics as such, but also in the culture, the physical heritage of Europe as a whole.
Good. So in your long tradition of collaboration with the EPS, you must have a lot of stories about the EPS and people, and or in your life, in your private life. Do you have any anecdote to tell us, or any good story that we can record?
Well, there is some interesting thing, especially for the younger physicists who are craving for some international recognition. For that is one of the charming features of such a high standard European physical society, that it takes it helps the youngsters to take part in the activities. And I myself, I can't say that I'm really a youngster, but a few years ago at the Great Congress, the 13th General Conference, I was allowed to show the results of my own research in a quite unexpected way. There has been a lot of email exchange with the Secretariat of the EPS, and there were some difficulties on my side, but these difficulties were within a day they were swept away. And I think it's the message of this for the younger physicists is that they have to apply and to participate in the activities. When you trying to get in contact with the European Physical Society is honored by even by its presidency. So the highest officials deal with the lowest people in the field, and that is one of the most important things, I think, of the most charming things of the European Physical Society.
Thank you very much.
Well, for Robert Pick, I'm working, or I have been working, because now I am an emeritus professor at the Université Pierre et Marie Curie in Paris, where I've been appointed by 1970. I'm a solid-state physicist, and I have been working for something less than 19 years for EPS.
Oh, that's very interesting. So you must have a lot of activities going on with EPS already.
Well, I had two types of activity. I went, because I'm a solid-state physicist, so I went on the board of the condensed matter division in 1989, I think, or 1990, I cannot remember exactly, but it doesn't matter. And I was very rapidly appointed also as a member of the action committee, which did not exist, and I had to formulate it. And I can tell you a little bit about that. Well, Condensed Matter Division is the largest division of the European Physical Society, and it's very diversified, and we had really to work very much in order to restructure it, to form new boards, to find out how to work properly, and I hope that my action has not been too negative in that respect.
So it's interesting. So you were mentioning the role of the solid state physics in the EPS. So what did you do to improve the importance of solid state physics?
Well, you see, it is really the largest community, and it's very diverse. And I found out when I entered that there was only a few branches which were represented as subgroups in this division, and it did not cover the field. Unfortunately, there was rules, regulations, which say that you have really to change it, the approval of the council. So we had to define what were really the sections which are mostly missing, to find chairman for that. It's not easy, because if you ask somebody, do you need such a thing? You say yes. Do you want to chair it? Oh no, certainly not. He will be much more efficient than I am. And finally it took us 3 years to make 3 new sections. 2 have been efficient, and the third one had only a chairman that we finally found. But the chairman after 1 year said, well, I just cannot form a board. So it was not a success, though there was a real necessity for it. But it still does not exist.
Okay. So how do you see the future now?
Well, the future of this community is, I would say, a future which is very much based on everyday life, because solid state physics is presumably one of those community which are really linked to technology, which will the advancement of many aspects. You see, for instance, in Mulhouse, there is a strong branch which is related to the polymer section, and when you say polymer, it means that it's anything that you are living with for the time being. Well, there is also a very strong semiconductor activity and in this group, and which is also extremely important for everyday life. And it has not yet developed in what is now called nanotechnology, which is really reducing every piece of material that you are using to a nanoscale, which means a very 1/1000th of a micron, or a few thousandths of a micron, and this is something which is developing a tremendous activity at enormous speed for the time being.
So I suppose this is a worldwide, very active community, but what is the role of Europe?
Well, Europe is very important in that aspect. I just want to mention that my good old friend Albert Fert got a Nobel Prize in last year for magnetoresistance, which is one of those things which has helped very much in nanotechnology for the time being. So Europe has a very important role, and we had a certain number of Nobel Prizes in this discipline.
Good. So can I ask you to please tell us a little story that you may remember?
Well, yes. Well. Before that, maybe I would like to speak also of my second activity, which is the Action Committee on Conferences, which is an important role that EPS is playing. It started really at the start of the EPS. At that time, Europe was split between the West and the East, and there was an Iron Curtain. And the one problem of EPS is that there was physicists from the West and from the East. But it was extremely difficult to get physicists from the East attending conferences in the West. And the role of this committee at that time was essentially to be a kind of guarantee that the conference was not political, that it was perfectly allowed for people from Russia, from Czechoslovakia, Poland, or other countries to come. And it was a constant fight to have them and to have the people you wanted. Because they were very eager at that time to send you people that you did not wish to have. So when I arrived, which was by 1990, then things have totally changed. There was no more Iron Curtain, and there was still the role of EPS. People, it's a real necessity for physicists, first of all, to work in their lab, number two, to publish, and number one, to meet. So meetings are extremely important. And there are two tendencies. One is to avoid meeting, wow, waste of time. Second one is the contrary. I want to meet every minute with my friend. And you have to find kind of mean value between the two and to push people to keep that mean value. And that is not easy. And that's what EPS has been always trying to do by giving certain means of some money, helping them to get grants from other places. And that is the role that we are still pursuing for the time being.
Well, so you have already told us a lot of interesting things about your activity, but I mean, do you have anything special to tell us, a little anecdote or story?
Well, you see, I have been not only member of EPF, but I have been also a university professor. A university professor teaches, and teaching is very rewarding in some respect. It's tiring on the other hand, because teaching is acting. You are an actor. You have students all around. Sometimes, and when I started, we had 40 in a classroom, actually 400. And you have really to keep them alive and at the same time at rest, which is two opposite things. It's not very easy to get. When I really started with 400 students, it was very difficult. You have noisy students. You have also students who are there basically to meet their boyfriend or their girlfriend. And there were some of them which were just lying on the front row, and they were clearly not listening anything except to themselves. So fortunately I was rather good in sending piece of chalks so that they could move from one subject to another one. So you see, it's an interesting life both to be a physicist and to be a physics professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Newman, I'll ask you to introduce yourself then and to tell us what is your activity, your present and past activity.
Well, I better start off with, I was born in Dresden in Germany, became a refugee, went to Italy. My main aim, as I've never been a physicist, was to become an engineer, which I achieved in England when I went to England in '39, before the war. I spent more years in England, and finally the result in what I wanted to do, that was radio research. I was always interested in radio communications, and I joined the radio research station in England and worked on abstracting papers from the various international journals. And that's where I got experience with publications. And in 1968, I applied for a post with CERN because of my language knowledge and editorial experience, and joined the Public Information Office at CERN 1 month before the September 1968 inauguration of the EPS at CERN. Our offices were directly underneath the famous council chamber where the ceremonies took place. But I wasn't aware of the importance of that until a little bit later. My colleague at the Public Information Office the chief of which was Edwin